Let's slow down a bit. It feels there are a number of moving parts at every intimate moment. We're going to get a moment to just make sense of what we know so far and admittedly what we don't know given the early stage of the counting of these results. Part of our guest here in studio is Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, who is a political analyst, certainly no stranger to the commentariat, as they say in South Africa. Great to see you, Doc. Thanks for popping by.
Thank you very much for having me.
So there we are, 13.99% of the votes counted so far. I think it's always important to reiterate that these are just early signs, but I wonder at this stage whether there are any surprises for you.
Of course there are, even though I don't think that the lineup that we are normally used to is going to change. Namely, the ANC is going to occupy number 1, the DA number 2, and the EFF. However, I think Umkhonto weSizwe is giving the EFF a good run for its money because they are posing a threat. Because I think ordinarily the votes that would have gone to the EFF, now they are going to Umkhonto weSizwe. And maybe that will spark a debate within the EFF on matters of leadership, whether Julius Malema, should he not give others a chance to take over and lead the party. Because the electoral performance of the party has been dealt with a blow of late. Not only now, even at local government level.
Right, and you know the EFF, according, or at least until this point, had always been seen as a party that resonated mostly with young people. In fact, I think a lot of people assigned that constituency to the EFF. We saw a lot of young people come out to cast their ballot yesterday off the back of commentary that young people in South Africa are disillusioned. The picture on the ground seems to be a very different one.
I know that you and I, we don't speak the same language on this matter. I think there has been the phenomenon of youth voter apathy, but that phenomenon has not been limited to our context. It has been a global phenomenon because young people have held a neoliberal outlook to life. What is the meaning of walking out of politics? It means that you are individualistic and so on. And also must look at the results of 1999 because that's when people started talking about the lost generation and so on. So of late we've seen a turnout which is very much high, so to speak. Maybe there is a need for a paradigm shift amongst us as analysts.
Indeed, especially because many of the young people will tell you that participating in politics is not restricted to casting your ballot. I mean, the democracy is alive between elections in as much as all of that culminates on election day. And young people in some instances have shown that they are interested, in fact. They're asking questions about whether or not their employment prospects are safe under certain political parties, their own future, you know, the state of the economy, etc. And in many ways, I think, you know, their voice is being heard in this election.
No, of course. I mean, young people are future leaders. And if young people don't get involved in politics, it means that our democracy will be under threat. But secondly, you are right to say that our economy has not been doing the way it should have. If you look at unemployment, it is sitting at 34%, and it is worse amongst the youth. So I think that makes young people also not to be interested to engage in political processes. But I think of late, the picture is different that has been painted.
Yeah, and we'll move away from young people in a moment, but just on this parting shot, we have seen, you know, in a way, kind of a reinvigoration of activism amongst young people, especially when you consider the Fees Must Fall, Roads Must Fall movement. In those instances, a number of leaders came about from that, you know, moment, and some of them are now taking up positions in government, actually. They're becoming MPs. Again,
that phenomenon is not limited to our context. Look at what had happened of late in terms of the conflict that broke out in the US. Young people taking a stand against what is happening in the Gaza Strip. But also coming back home, yes, we've seen young people taking a stand against the slow pace of service delivery. But I think that activism must not be limited to universities because it might come across to be elitist. So it needs to also permeate to other spaces in townships and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be remiss for us not to speak about KZN in particular. I mean, up to this point, we've heard many people saying that this election is going to be characterized by the story of KwaZulu-Natal because of just how hotly contested it is, the new entrants which at this early stage are making a formidable impact. The situation may very well change, but my goodness, if the early results are anything to go by in KwaZulu-Natal, less than 1% of the votes counted so far. However, the Umkhonto weSizwe party having, you know, quite a comfortable start, let's say.
Of course, KZN is an interesting phenomenon. because of the binary that exists there in terms of the hybrid system, because you've got two layers. You've got the rural section of the population, you also have urban centers. Now, my view is that political power in post-colonial states, it comes from two sections of society. Urban, I mean, if you look at the ANC, where it has been dealt with a blow, it is in Gauteng, Nelson Mandela Bay,
the metros.
Yes. So the interesting thing is that the ANC will not be dealt with a blow in terms of rural areas. It is going to win the Eastern Cape, it is going to win Northern Cape, Northwest, Mpumalanga, but it might not win KZN. And if it doesn't win KZN, it might be out of power, because last time 25% of the votes, they came from KZN. So the battleground will be Gauteng, KZN, and the Western Cape, and maybe none of them will make the ANC perform well.
Right. Again, the national picture is what we're showing on our screen, less than 14% of the vote being counted so far. Let's go to the Western Cape, since you've mentioned it as well. Interesting dynamics. The DA predicted to drop below 50%, not to be at this moment. However, the Patriotic Alliance also, securing a spot in the top 3 at this early stage. Let me emphasize again.
Again, Patriotic Alliance has been giving the DA a good run for its money. It has been posing a serious threat. And on top of that, we've seen that the foreign policy posture of the DA has caused a shift in the Muslim communities who are unhappy about the way the DA has been speaking about what is happening in the Gaza Strip. So it's not quite obvious that the DA is going to be an outright winner, because you see a lot of threats from the Patriotic Alliance, from Good, and they are contesting over the same base.
Absolutely. All right, we'll see how it all goes. Again, most of the votes are yet to be counted. Just over 3,200 districts accounted for so far out of the 23,000 voting stations we've seen. Dr. Breakfast, great to speak to you as always. The first of many discussions, I imagine, in the week ahead. Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast is a political analyst.